So today we're going to talk a little bit about the YouShape Award, which is one of the newer sort of top awards, I suppose you could say, for in scouting. And as it says there at the bottom, technically speaking, you can earn towards this award in all the sections listed there. Although in reality, really you can only start earning towards it in Cub Scouts and Explorers, because of how difficult some of the sections of this badge are to do. The concept of the YouShape Award is essentially what's known as youth-led scouting. So the old school of thought in relation to scouting is that the adult leaders make their own program, run their own program, and generally it ends up being fairly similar year on year what you do, with very little variation as to timing of different camps and the content of different badges and different varieties of the program. And it may be the case that using that old system, that scouts are doing stuff they're not really interested in, which isn't really the point of scouting. The point of scouting is to do stuff that you're interested in and learn some new things along the way, especially scoutcraft and camping and things like that, which are obviously very important skills for self-reliance and ingenuity and things of that nature. So the U-Shape Award is a way to encourage young people to actually get involved in the process. And what this manifests as is young people, like those squirrels, beavers, cubs, scouts, and explorers, being part of the planning process for what is done on different programs, making sure that all that stuff is actually of interest to them, that they actually like to do. But beyond that, to actually allow them to help lead and plan and do different parts of that program, to make a real impact and to gain skills in relation to leadership and all those kinds of self-representation. They're very useful in the wider world. As you can see by the main badge on the screen there, you have the core U-Shape Award surrounded by lead, plan, and represent, respectively. These are the different parts of the U-Shape Award and youth-shaped scouting in general. And essentially, it is what it says. And this can manifest itself as helping to lead different parts of the program and different nights, helping to plan individual activities that you're interested in and you've got a passion in and you'd like to share with your fellow members of your section. And of course, representing yourself, going to the more adult meetings, the more important meetings about scouting in your local area, different planning meetings, and giving your thoughts from a youth perspective and sort of making your own impact. Because in reality, scouting is about you. Scouting is about what you'd like to do, and what you'd like to do, with your other young people that you're experiencing scouting with. It's not about the adults. The adults are just there to facilitate things. All of us are volunteers. None of us get paid. But it's about doing things that you're actually interested in doing. So I definitely recommend it. And the U-Shape Award is one of these awards that stays with you until you join Network at the age of 18. So you can do bits and pieces of this badge as you go through different sections from Squirrels through Explorers. And the badge actually stays on your uniform for that entire duration as you add to it. So if you have the completed U-Shape Award, it shows how much you've actually put into scouting in a local area, and chances are you might get some kind of extra recognition from your local district commissioner, your local district lead volunteer, or something like that. So it's certainly worth looking at if you're a very impassioned and driven young person. So moving on to the requirements, the U-Shape Award starts with the core central badge. And as it says here, one of the most important things with this is helping to improve or deliver something in your local district. So moving on, we have the core badge, which is the first thing you really want to be doing when you are going through the U-Shape Award. Essentially, this is about having some agency to yourself, something that you'd like to try and improve for scouting in your troop or your section. So it's something relatively local. If you're an Explorer Scout, the scope of this is quite much larger, so you can have a look individually into that. But essentially, this boils down to finding something or talking to your section leaders about, something you'd like to improve or change. Generally, what I'd like to suggest is, um, as it says there, changing something about scouts. If you want to, for example, make it so that scouts lead their own games, that's usually a very good idea, rather than having leaders be in charge of running the games. If you guys in scouting want to run your own games, then that actually helps you towards a YouShape award, and it helps develop that leadership skills and those patrol leader skills and things like that. But really, it can be anything. As it says there, it can be about learning or teaching a new skill. So if you'd like to be a part of teaching some of the other people in your section about a passion you have, then feel free to do that. It's always very good. And learning a new skill, developing a current talent, that really depends on how your section leaders think that might manifest. It really does depend. But the core U-shape award is really about making that first step and identifying something that you'd like to change. And as it says, they're actually making that happen. So taking some steps towards that. When you achieve this badge, it really depends on your section leaders and convincing them that you have. But it's not too difficult to do, especially if you volunteer to help run a night. Moving on, we have the Plan Award. Um, So one of the things that is worth mentioning is that the requirements for the U-Shape Award actually change depending on which section you're in, and it's not entirely clear when or which parts of the award actually carry over. In my opinion, if you've earned part of a U-Shape Award, then it should carry with you to the next section. But really, there's like virtually no guidance I can find on the U-Shape Awards and how they interact with sectional badges for certain sections. One thing you will notice is that the color surrounding the various badges will change depending on which section you earned them in, as does the requirements. So the ones that I've got on this presentation are in relation to the Explorer U-Shape Awards. However, the requirements do change drastically as you go down the different U-Shape Awards. I personally think this may be worthy of a change in future, because if you run the U-Shape Award as a section only badge, it becomes less important to earn it, because it's not even a staged badge that's something you can carry across from your uniform, like the First Aid, the Nights Away, or the Hikes Away badges are. So it doesn't make much sense of why you go through the process of earning the U-Shape Award as, for example, a scout, if the moment you turn 14 or 14 and a half, you lose that anyway, and it just goes onto your badge blanket. Personally, if I was the head of the U-Shape Award, I would make it something that persists across the uniform and has some kind of middle ground in terms of requirements, a bit like how the Million Hands and Community Impact badge sort of persists across uniform. However, obviously that's not the case currently. So I'm just going to go very quickly through the different requirements for explorers. However, it's worth mentioning that if you're an explorer, I would not really focus on getting your U-Shape awards, as sort of counterintuitive as that sounds, really. It's more of an optional extra, a very, very optional extra, because unlike things like your King Scout Award and your Explorer Belt and your Young Leaders Awards, the U-Shape Award doesn't have anything that carries onto either the network uniform or the adult uniform. There is no award beyond just having the badges. And again, you can't wear those onto those future uniforms. So really, it's up to you whether you want to go through the effort of doing it. But I suppose it's an extra something to work towards. And if you're a leader of one of the sections where the YouShape board applies, then you can feel free to build it into your program and make it part of your program, because obviously youth-shaped scouting is a big part of the future of scouting. Although I think that we need to actually change the award potentially to recognise it more, in my opinion. So here we go with the core badge. Generally, these follow the same themes of requirements, but they are lesser as you go down through the sections. So for Explorer Scouts, it says change one thing or improve one thing for Explorer Scouts in your district. So essentially, if you don't know, a district is one level above a group. So this basically implies all the different Explorer Scout units inside your district are all the ones you generally will know. If you are aware of other Explorer Scout units inside your district, this will apply for all of those. Again, it's simple stuff, being available and making sure you're available to teach them a new skill or your peers a new skill, or just change something generally about explorers, making it perhaps more youth-led, having the explorers' ideas of what they'd like to do more built into the program rather than leaving it to the leaders, things of that nature. Because really, if you're an explorer, you should be old enough to decide what you want to do regardless, and then the leaders are mostly there just to facilitate what you wish to do, okay? Moving on, but generally it's a similar thing of just having agency and taking your first step. The requirements for scouts section is relatively similar, but it's more local, just about your scouts and your local troop, essentially. Moving on, we have the plan badge here, as shown in the center. So essentially, this is planning some kind of event. In Explorers, it's a district event, helping to plan that, and finding some specific goal or purpose, something like that. It's worth reiterating that these badges aren't awarded on any level or checked on any level above your section or your unit. So if you are a leader or you know a leader who's going to be awarding these, you don't have to worry too much about the requirements. They're pretty flexible as long as you think that the person has made a good effort and done something to earn towards it. So I myself, as a scout leader, we have a sort of vote at the start of every term on the plan and on the program for that term, and the different scouts in the scout troop and the scouts section sort of raise their hands for people if they'd like to go ahead and help plan that with the leaders or with the young leaders, and if they'd like to help deliver that night. And for doing that, they actually earn these badges very naturally. So I'd recommend involving that into your program if you're a leader and listening to this this presentation. And as I say, these are the requirements for explorers. They're more focused on a district level, but as you go through and down the sections towards squirrels and beavers, they get lesser and lesser and more realistic, and mostly involving just the local unit. Moving on, we have the represent badge here, which is one of the more difficult ones, especially for explorers to earn. This is to do with getting in touch with your local district, identifying potential volunteers, getting them involved, getting your local explorers involved with something as well that you've learned to help the community, working with people of higher levels, essentially your group scout leader, the person in charge of a group, district commissioner, even county if you'd like to, and about how that affects the scouts and scouts in general with the different sections. Again, this is pretty lofty, especially for what you get for it. You just get this badge rather than anything else. So again, just do this optionally, or if you are an Explorer Scout leader, perhaps build it into your program, engage with those district commissioners, those district lead volunteers more, and get this naturally involved into your program and make sure that your young people are involved with your program and the local issues rather than just being passengers. But yes, as I mentioned before, as this goes down from Explorer Scouting to regular Scouts and then down to Cub Scouts, etc., the requirements get lesser. So don't feel too put off by this if you are a scout watching this of a different section to Explorer Scout. And finally, oh, hang on. And finally, we have the lead badge here, which essentially just running part of a session or a game or various different things like that. Unit forums, troop forums, section forums, things of that nature. Again, these are flexible. It really depends on what the leaders of your unit or your section believe you've earned, like how close you come to earning these various different things. But I'd say this is probably one of the easier, in reality, of these different YouShape Award badges to earn, because leading a session is quite easy to do. Planning is a little bit more involved, and again, representing is really the most difficult one. And in reality, this, Explorer Scout version is not even that difficult. So I imagine that the Scout section version, etc., is easier to do. If I was to be running these as a lower section, if I was, for example, a Scout leader who was going through the YouShape Awards, I might perhaps give a brief summary to the Explorer Scout leader once they move up to Explorer Scouts, for example, of what they actually did for the YouShape Awards, because that might be a good enough excuse for them to just immediately get those upon joining the new section. Because, as I mentioned before, the integration between the YouShape Awards is, in my opinion, a little bit lacking currently, and perhaps could be a little bit better. So you can feel free to bridge that yourself or do whatever you'd like to do, because these are all locally awarded. They're only awarded within your unit or your section, so feel free to do what you'd like with them. And that's it. So I hope that was at least informative in some respects. There's not too much to really say about the YouShape Awards, unfortunately, because they are local awards. They are considered relatively top awards and sort of a step towards things like the Young Leaders Awards. And perhaps, when they're working towards the Young Leaders Awards from, things like the Duke of Edinburgh's awards that you can do with volunteering, maybe you can just get these or pick these up, almost by accident as part of doing that volunteering, if you're clever enough and you keep track of it. So if you're an explorer and you're working towards those top awards like the Chief Scouts Platinum Award or the Chief Scouts Diamond Award or the King Scout Award, if you just bear in mind during your volunteering aspects of those, what you can do for your YouShape Award, you might be able to just complete it by accident almost, if you're clever enough with it. Hopefully, as time goes on, this is a relatively new award, that it'll be refined and changed a little bit. We'll have to see. But I think it's a step in the right direction for scouting, really, making sure that young people are involved in creating their program and breaking some of the more set in their ways sections and groups perhaps out of the standard program that they've always used for however many years and making it a bit more tailored. Could be quite nice. All right, thanks. Hope you enjoyed.